So, good afternoon to everyone and welcome to this Octo Smart Talk. Before introducing you the speakers for today, I would like to thank Octo to be the sponsor of these Smart Talks. And I would like also to remind you the importance of these Smart Talks also for the future, because in the future we will have other Smart Talks and we will talk about artificial intelligence, smart city, connectivity, and other technologies. So please keep yourself updated and try to follow all our smart talks. Today, I have the pleasure to have here Mr. Fabio Pressi, is the CEO of Infoblu, and Mr. Edwin Colella is the Chief Marketing Officer of Octo Telematics. And today,
good afternoon.
Thank you. And today we have the pleasure to introduce a new tool that was developed by the two companies, and I think it's a very nice tool, especially if we link this tool to what is happening right now. No, you know that when we take decision as managers, we have to take also into account the general environment, and the days that we are living right now, they are, let's say, quite strange. But I see a positive correlation between the traffic and economy. And in fact, there are several researchers, they made research in this field, and some of them, they define the traffic congestion, for example, like cholesterol. If it's too much, then you will die. But also, if you do not have it, you will die too. So, I would like to use, let's say, this example of cholesterol to introduce Fabio Pressi, and I would like to ask him to present us this new tool that has been developed by Infoblu and by Octo.
Okay, thank you so much, Salvatore. Good afternoon to everybody. Before introducing the platform or the tool, I would like just to spend some words about the collaboration of the two companies, Infoblu and Octo, because it's really important to understand the basis of what we are doing today. The two companies started from different markets because Octo is a leader in telematic insurance, and Infoblu is part of a big group, of Atlantia Group, dealing with many transportation modes. Of course, Infoblu is related to road control in terms of traffic management, traffic information. And these two different competences, in 2006, we decided to put together. In fact, Octo is a shareholder of Infoblu. In 2006, we decided to put together because we envisage that from GPS, from the connected vehicle world, that most of traffic information will be generated. So we started working, I can say 14 years ago in big data approach. And in that time, we focused on traffic information. Traffic information means real-time information in terms of traffic flow, in terms of congestion of roads. And what you will see today and what is the tool today is, I can say, a new vision of what we have done in the past, because it's the vision of historical data, but with a real-time approach. So it's we decided that due to also to the difficult period of COVID, to analyze mobility under a new approach. So every day we will show exactly how mobility at national level is changing day by day, because the next months we will see a lot of changes in terms of mobility, and we decided to give to public authorities, to a university, to companies, something can be like a measurement system of mobility. And I hope to have time to describe you what is the reliability of the data and what is behind. But just to start, I would like to focus on what we have behind the platform. A lot of data from from the vehicle up to the information. All the value chain is controlled by our companies.
And so, for example, I can see here in this slide, I can see there are some curves. I can see also there are some data. Could you please, let's say, enter more into the details of the platform?
Sure. Maybe if you show the slide before, because it's the starting, if the people who'd like to access, because it's a platform, so they can access, and there is the link in the chat. There is the picture of the mobility today, and our basis is, of course, is traffic, so traffic modeling. So we decided to use a traffic modeling approach, and we started to compare the pre-COVID period with the mobility of day by day. So in the left part of the monitor, the screen, you will have the division between light vehicle and heavy vehicles, and compare with the period of pre-COVID mobility. And on the right side is the same day of the last week. So you will see, because this is also an instrument to understand how the mobility will be, is an instrument to detect day by day the value of mobility.
Okay, thank you very much. So I have now a question for Mr. Colella. I know that your company is, let's say, a very important actor in the field of smart mobility. Now, we have a tool that, let's say, it's based on a data that it's three-dimensional. We see the past, we see the present, and I imagine that we can see also the future. Is it correct?
Yes. And basically what is represented in the Mobility Data Lab online are basically two dimensions of the possibility of three dimensions. So you correctly mentioned the past, because obviously we are comparing data that we have collected from the past, and we are correlating them with the present. So the mobility flows that present and over the last period before the lockdown deriving from the COVID-19 have been, let's say, to identify correlation between these two patterns of mobility flows. And with algorithms that define predictive, that are using our analytics capabilities, the same amount of data is able also to project patterns and mobility flows that might happen with high probability in the future. This is very relevant for the condition that we will obviously that will challenge the government, institution, and companies in the near future, because the reopening of companies, the reopening of many commercial and business activities will impact obviously the mobility, but the patterns of this mobility will not be only defined by the new behavior, but also compared to the seasonality, for example, or to the time of the day, for example. And correlating the previous data to what might be the new patterns give us an overview on possible different scenarios of mobility, which might be used by government and companies in order to react or to prevent and organize properly the decisions and the availability of vehicles or the availability of traffic management tools in order to prevent traffic congestions or higher utilization of specific roads while others are not used, and many other, let's say, conditions that may be preventive analyzed and give actionable analytics and tools to the government in order to take the right decisions.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think I'm still missing one element, at least, of this, let's say, of this model. From where are you taking the data? Mr. Colella, so can you answer to this question?
Yes, for sure. And the data are coming from different sources. The mainstream of this data is coming from data that are available from Octo, Telematics, and Infoblu in their respective activities. And they are combined in one single database. They are related to traffic information and the utilization of vehicle in terms of number of kilometers or number of miles that the vehicles are driving every single day. And we are now in the position to integrate over the next couple of weeks also the data deriving from the diffusion of COVID-19 pandemic in the regions, basically. And with this additional source of data, the correlation might be even higher in terms of seeing really how these patterns of mobility flows have impacted in a way or are correlated to the diffusion of the pandemic, again, to give a tool that might be used to take further decisions or different decisions by any stakeholder. And obviously, the solution that is behind is capable to ingest, so to include many and several sources of data, including sources deriving from mobile phones or by other, let's say, databases having mobility flows or other kind of data. This is the capability of this tool, but also the capability of both Infoblu and Octo Telematics. And the demonstration site is basically representing one of the perspectives. Many others might be available for further analysis with different kind of data.
Okay, thank you very much. So I have a question for Mr. Pressi. We are talking about, you were talking before, we're mentioning the big data, traffic controls, etc., etc. Mr. Colella was mentioning this, I understand, this black box, this technology that has been implemented by Octo Telematics. Now, let's go back again to the data and the quality of data. Are they really reliable?
Yeah. What I can say about reliability is that luckily, I can say luckily, we started to work 14 years ago on real-time traffic information. That it means that our scope was to inform the user about accident, about incident in front of him in a very short time. And to do this, you need a lot of information. So it's term of capability of collect information very fast, analyze and transform in information for the user. So thanks to this capability, today we can say that the reliability can be measured. And this is the new things about this collaboration, because until today, I can say very few companies decided to open their database to show to the market and to the government what we have in real time. And we can say reliability today because we can measure in terms of kilometers of our devices is traveling day by day. We are speaking about 10 million of kilometers every day on 100,000 kilometers of roads. So we can, I can say, we put the face on data in terms of quantity and not in terms of percentage, because we wanted to describe to the market and to the institution that the data is available. The data, if is well analyzed, can be an instrument for decisions. So what you will see on the platform is exactly a lot of graphics, a lot of representation of data with the indication of how many kilometers or miles is driven by our devices.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add something?
Yes, yes,
sure.
Yes, do it.
So there is obviously there are two perspectives. One is the one that Fabio has just presented, which is basically how the source of data that we are using for this mobility data lab and represented on the website is statistically relevant and reliable in terms of giving a perspective on the mobility. At the same time, for many other applications, different level of granularity might be used, also using obviously lower numbers of sources. I make you a very simple example. In a city that has, let's say, 1 million vehicles circulating every day, which is a huge metropolitan city, a huge, let's say, city in one of the capital of Europe or US. In this city, it is already statistically relevant to have between 10,000 and 20,000 vehicles sending the data every day. So it's not needed to have 100,000 or 200,000 of vehicles, because a percentage that is between 1 to 3% is already statistically given a right perspective of what is happening in the specific, let's say, to be covered. Obviously, the sample should be statistically relevant, not only in terms of dimension, but also in terms of how the sample has been identified. This allows other cities around the world to put in place a scheme that might be analyzed by the Mobility Data Atlas and the Mobility Data Lab in a way that is quite simple and fast, because from the moment that these data are collected, you can start the day after already to see the patterns and analyze them, and in 3-6 months already have the right information to use for other purposes.
Okay, thank you. And I would like just to connect my next question to what you were saying just in the last few words. We have here on the slide, on the screen, we have a map of Italy, and you were talking about patterns. You launched this platform, let's say, probably what was 2 weeks ago, yeah? So do we have already some patterns regarding the behaviors of the Italians during this COVID situation? Can we say that they are, let's say, good or not?
I will answer on myself and leave then the floor to Fabio to add something. From a general perspective, all the data that we have collected are representing a dramatic drop in terms of personal mobility, so passengers' cars, up to 97, 95% in some cases, in some days. So it's basically nobody's using the car compared to what was happening before, which is a huge result and a demonstration of the interest and the attitude in this specific context of our people and the entire nation to react to these dramatic conditions. The same was represented also in terms of let's say logistics, so goods delivery and generally speaking commercial vehicles, with obviously a bit lower in terms of reduction because of the fact that many activities, including food delivery, was still or is still working. By the way, luckily, because we had the opportunity to fulfill any needs in any part of the Italy without any problem from any people in the country. At the same time, this representation that you can see in this slide is representing on overall how the reduction has been more performed against the other regions. So it's not a representation that is showing if a region of Italy has been less or good in terms of respecting the lockdown measures, but how it is being applied locally. So we can see that the Regione Valle d'Aosta, which is on the top left corner of this map, is one of the regions where the traffic has been reduced more compared to the other regions. So within also within the boundaries and the restriction, obviously following all the rules, but the number of kilometers that have been registered in this region are significantly less compared to the ones that are registered into the other regions, like Emilia-Romagna, which in this chart is represented with a bit a different color, which is much lighter, representing then the reduction has been a bit less compared to Regione Valle d'Aosta. So generally speaking, yes, the lockdown has impressively demonstrated that let's say how the people in Italy have been, let's say, following the rules and the regulation that have been sent by the government. And at the same time, the region reacted differently for many reasons, including the fact that many production activity related to food, and food in general is something that happens in some region and not in the other, were also represented.
Okay,
yeah,
we are
I don't know if Fabio, probably Fabio wants to add something.
Yeah, there is one insight that I like very much to show to the people connected, because is about the transit of a heavy vehicle during the weekend. During the last 2 weeks, the government decided to open the transit of heavy vehicles also during the weekend, because normally in Italy heavy vehicle cannot transit in Sunday, and due to the COVID, they decided to allow them to travel. But what we can see from the data, that anything has changed. So the lorries continue to have the same behavior like the past weeks. So it means that the logistic chain in Italy is not ready to switch from one model to the other in few days. And this is a good example to show how the data can be a thermometer, can be a meter of a decision taken by government.
Yeah. Mr. Pressi, I have another question for you. I just want to underline that we are receiving a lot of questions, probably in the chat. We are receiving questions. If we do not have time to answer to all these questions, there will be a follow-up by Octo. I have now a question for you, Mr. Pressi. We are now talking to, let's say, an international market. So what are your plans for the future? Are you already starting to collect that data from other countries, or right now your experiment is just, let's say, related to the Italian territory?
Yeah, of course, this the platform is based on national analysis, and unluckily is in Italian, but we plan just in tomorrow on Monday, the platform will be also in English, to give the feeling that this model can be applied international, and is just matter of data. It's not matter of platform, because our company, and this is a very important change of the market. Our company working in traffic information understood that the market cannot be national. Traffic is anyway a European market, and the connected vehicle became a global market. So also data is a global market, and we are working in partnership with other companies, or we are collecting directly data through Octo and through our shareholder that is international data also from other countries. So our strategy, of course, is to open to European level with different approach. But mobility, like the transportation market, is anyway a global market.
Thank you very much. I would like to use this, let's say, last 7 minutes that we have. I have a question for Mr. Colella. So going back again to data, how the public authorities, how, for example, managers, insurance companies, et cetera, how they can use this data that you are providing now?
So I would say that as an objective, we all tend as a society to reach what is called a vision zero, which is taking into account at least 4 aspects of our life. And the first related to specifically to mobility. The first is related to zero crashes, so to reduce and have the objective to reduce to 0 the crashes. The second is to zero pollution, so to reduce the emissions of vehicles up to having a pure, let's say, condition of having a zero emission environment around us. The third is related to zero congestions, so to have flows of mobility that allows the cities and the citizens to have a better use of the vehicles and a perfect balance between the needs, the demand, and the availability and the response on the roads. So not to have overloads and underloads, to have a sort of dynamic routes that might be dynamically defined in order to have better conditions and obviously zero congestions. And finally, also what we call the zero contamination, in terms of reducing to 0 the possibility for people that are traveling, walking, or using a bike in the city, the probability to get, let's say, infected by, in this case, the virus. So these 4 elements that are combined, what we call the vision zero, can be a very relevant objective of the cities and the governments. And in this sense, mobility allows practically to contribute to these elements, and which are obviously ambition and ambitious. So we needed to work to reach this element, but the steps doors we can go are obviously very interesting and might be given results in the short term. I make you an example, traffic management in terms of traffic flows management to dynamically make sure that the systems that are managing the flows in the cities are giving the right frequency and the right stop and go to the vehicle dynamically depending from the flows are technologies that are already available and might be enabled by a telematic device on the vehicle as such. Or defining in a region the possibility to use the vehicle proportionally to the emissions rather than to the rush hours or other things is also possible today. Regione Lombardia in Italy has been deploying and launching a program that is giving the citizen using the vehicle in the region to use in a certain way the vehicle depending on the class of emission of each vehicle, so tailor-made on the behavior and the habits of each individual and depending on the vehicle emission class. These are very dynamic systems that might be used in a very simple way with a low impact in terms of resources, giving the city a new way to manage the flows and the mobility within the cities.
Oh, so I see from your words that the future of transportation will be completely different from what we have today. So, for example, we can also mention the shared mobility, et cetera, et cetera. I have the last question for Mr. Pressi. We are just missing 3 minutes. We have left 3 minutes. And so Mr. Colella was talking about the zero vision, and we are listening also about the circular economy, and et cetera. European Union also is pushing a lot for a transportation system more efficient. And I would like to know your opinion about what is the future of the smart transportation market. You were mentioning big data. So can you please give us your opinion on the smart transportation market? Thank you very much.
Yeah. My opinion is that my opinion is also correlated to my past, because I started working in ITS, in Intelligent Transportation Systems, since the 90s, so it's more than 20 years. And what I saw in this period is that the mega trend of mobility today is converging. So the mega trend in terms of smart cities, connected vehicle, autonomous vehicle, insurance, mobility payment, and in the future we will see also a new approach on mobility payment due to the distance between person and between objects. So all of this megatrend today is converging. And one key element in this convergence, a part of technology, of course, is also data. So companies working of data, we see the big tech company working on that, but in our, I can say, small world, we can say that our approach is really to try to keep our vision on data, because from my point of view is one key element of the smart transportation market. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Colella, just 1 minute left. Can you please tell us how fleet managers, mobility managers, how they can use the data provided by this platform?
So basically on the fleet manager side, so companies managing large fleet, they can use this kind of data to balance the flows and the utilization of both, let's say, passengers' cars or delivery of goods in a way that is much more balanced, considering all the elements that are surrounding. Obviously, every single vehicle has already the opportunity to see real-time traffic, which is something very useful in the day-by-day utilization. But if you have to plan logistics and routings for a large amount of vehicles, obviously you have to have something that can predict or eventually identify patterns of traffic and flows that for the future that might be balancing the way you are using your fleet in a better way and the way you are using your routing in a better way. And obviously you have additional services linked to these kind of technologies, which are also impacting the vehicle diagnostic or vehicle utilization, and generally speaking, fleet telematics. On the side of a mobility manager, which is in many countries compulsory by law for companies who have sites with more than 400 or 500 people, employees, it depends on the specific rules. Obviously, you have today and for the next future, the so-called phase 2 or phase 3 of this pandemic to identify solutions that might be helping both the cities and the people to commute in the daily life, to go to the office and go back to home. Obviously, smart working is a very intelligent solution that allows you not to use the mobility. So in this case, the mobility manager will be reduced in the sense that he has less, let's say, issues to manage and complexity to manage. But generally speaking, if you are not working in a company that is in the service area or in the digital area, and you are in a production site where people needs to be in the factory, the mobility manager needs to identify solutions like corporate car sharing or additional vehicles like car sharing vehicles or other solutions that might be balancing the reduced availability of public transportation, which might be probably one of the issues in different countries in Europe and US.
Okay, we are at the end of our time. I would like to thank again Mr. Edwin Colella, Chief Marketing Officer at Octo Telematics, and Mr. Fabio Pressi, CEO at Infoblu. I just would like to remind to our assistants that Octo is organizing other smart talks for the future, others webinars. So please take a look to the webpage and stay updated. Thank you very much. Thank you.